I cannot in good faith put my eggs in the Microsoft security basket. I know there are MSPs out there that do good for you. I'm not one of them. Just not going to do it.
No. Anyway, so we can get off that soapbox.
And the soapbox it is.
We don't like it. We don't think anyone should be using it. Definitely not using it in a healthcare environment.
Help me with hip-hop. Let's get it right. Protect your patients. Day and night. Donna and David, the experts on your side. Help me with hip-hop. Let's get it right.
All right, today we'll be talking about a few things, as we normally do. One is OCR dropped another settlement. We'll cover that and the questions behind the questions as far as that one's concerned. We'll also talk about the edge of the network and some problems you might have that you don't know about and how some people are thinking it's the new battleground for access to your information. And they may be right. And then we'll talk about some proxy networks that the FBI is seeing and with end-of-life routers, and that kind of spills over into the whole edge of network conversation. So,
That is the edge, but, it's the thing.
Yeah, it's the edge of our podcast. Speaking of edge, you are on the edge of somewhere else today on location.
Yeah. I'm in Canada. It's the edge of somewhere else. Yeah, Nova Scotia. I can't be much further east at this point.
Yeah, well, good deal. They do have the internet there, so we are good.
Yes, all about internet.
All about it. All right, let's dive into the HIPAA security rule investigation with a Florida healthcare provider. And this is kind of telling. There's some things that happen here that's like, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah. But both of us were like, as soon as we started discussing it, we're both like, I have so many questions.
I know.
So this one, and they always give you that little subtitle on their announcement so you know what the point is. And it's settlement resolves investigation into potential security failures exploited by a malicious insider. So the fact that it says potential means they settled.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they didn't say, yep, we violated it, which is different. And it's with Baycare Health System, which is in Tampa. It's a huge health system. 16 hospitals in Central Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem, the malicious insider, was at a physician's practice. And
yes.
Yeah. So they're not saying it was one of necessarily, we don't know if it's a physician practice they own or not. But the key here is it was at the physician practice, not within the hospital, where the malicious insider activity took place.
Yeah. So third party, how many times we talked about that?
Yeah. It's not even like in your supply chain. It's you didn't remove somebody's access. And I know that's one of your favorite topics.
Yeah. Hospital systems this is kind of a unique challenge because they have to give people access to their networks from the outside for continuity of care. And this has always been something that I've scratched my head with, because if you were to tell me I've got to give other people access to my systems, my data and all that from the outside, and I have no control over their security posture, I'm not wanting to do that, because I've went into small practices before and they're like, yeah, we connect to XYZ hospital system. And I'm like, but you don't have any security in place. Yeah, they handle that. And I'm like, no, they don't.
No. The number of times that you'll hear a practice of any size say, well, the hospital handles that. We had that conversation when we were at the HSCC meeting, and all these folks that with these big health systems, and we're like, yeah, if we go ask them, about helping them, they say, oh no, the hospital handles that.
Yeah,
And
they
they're
were
like,
all like, "What?"
but it should be a joint venture. We agree. You're going to have to do better to get that message out.
Yeah,
And so it was a pretty interesting conversation with them to get them to see that it's like once if the hospital's involved, they don't have to worry about security. But hands off.
yeah. It's the same conversation we hear about the cloud. It's somebody else's responsibility. That's never the case.
And it's not
So-
that way anymore. We're all responsible now for our.
Yeah, well-
you got to have responsibility, and that's essentially what we're going to be talking about on the edge thing. So
Yeah. But this happened back in October 2018. And I will start out by saying, if you're still doing what you were doing in 2018, you're already screwed.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be reevaluating your risk in a very different way. So anyway, this happened in 2018. This is interesting. So a patient, right, files a complaint alleging that after they received treatment at a Baycare facility, that she was contacted by an unknown individual who had photographs of her printed medical records, as well as a video of somebody scrolling through her medical records on a computer screen. I'm like,
Yep.
what? So, now it says malicious insider, maybe. Was it a hacker that got inside? Was it somebody who's a whistleblower and like, hey, lady, thought you should know. We got access to something we shouldn't have access to. I don't know. It's weird.
Blackmail.
Yeah.
I know this about you, and here's my proof I know this about you. This is why we have so many questions.
Yeah. But
And
we do
won't
know. No, we won't. We'll never know probably. Call Baycare and ask them. But what we do know is that the investigation determined that the credentials that were used in order to access the medical records belong to, drumroll please, a non-clinical former employee of
At
a physician's practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, there's two things already. Non-clinical. It's like, why did you even have access at all? And then
everything.
former. Right. To everything. And then former employee. So it's like, okay, who dropped the ball? Did the physician's practice not tell the hospital system that they were a former employee and needed to be removed? Or did the hospital not remove them? I don't know.
Again, we have so many questions.
Right.
So the director quote doesn't answer any of those other than what we already hit, but you can share what the quote is, but it doesn't answer any of our questions, I don't think.
Yep. So the director says, in an era of hacking and ransomware attacks, HIPAA regulated entities still need to ensure that workforce members and other users with access to an electronic medical record only have access to the health information necessary for them to perform their jobs. Allowing unrestricted access to patient health information can create an attractive target for a malicious insider. Now, if I'm reading between the lines, I did read unrestricted access, so already a problem, and malicious insider. So I'm assuming not an outside hacking incident, but again, how can you be a malicious insider and think you're not going to get caught doing this?
Well, when you don't work there anymore and you still have access to something, that's part of it. It's like, well, I don't work there anymore. There's nothing they can do to me,
Yeah, I don't know, man.
And probably wasn't anything they could do.
Yeah.
I mean,
but here's the thing. If they're a former employee, they're not an insider. They used to be an insider.
The way they got access was by being an insider.
Right.
I guess is why they're looking at it. But
I look at it as it's no different than if I had the credentials. I wouldn't be an insider.
right.
So
But yeah,
I get it.
It's such a loop. I mean, again, we have so many questions, but the bottom line is there's a non-clinical staff member at a physician's practice that had access to everything in a health record And because of that, they somehow another person's records were shared in a very unprofessional way.
Yeah.
So,
and I doubt, they sent a video, and I doubt where the video was stored was a HIPAA compliant solution.
There's so many things. See, we just keep getting at more things. And here's, it doesn't, okay. So it doesn't answer any of our questions either with what the corrective action. So it's a $800,000 settlement with a 2-year corrective action plan.
Right.
But the corrective action plan often will tell you something, but the fact that it's 2018 and here they are in 2025, they're announcing this settlement where they need to do a accurate and thorough risk analysis, but they don't mention that as part of the risk analysis enforcement. Develop a risk management plan. Okay. And policies and procedures to comply and train its workforce that has access on its HIPAA policies and procedures. So there's a key piece, because if you have policies and procedures and all you did was have people say they signed a piece of paper that said they read them, they're likely not trained on it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, I would think too that they have to train the physician practices at some point, because it says training its workforce that has access to, not workforce, specifically in the building, but that's something else. And you and I often see where somebody says, well, we do security awareness training. Well, that's great. But what training are you doing on your HIPAA policies and procedures? And we hear, we do the HIPAA training every year. But what about your HIPAA policies and procedures?
Exactly.
Well,
we give everybody the book and tell them to read it.
We got one in every bathroom stall. It's great reading.
Well, it's kind of like, you check the box to say you read the terms and conditions of that software you installed or that account you built. They're doing the same thing with your policies and procedures for the most part. So you've got to find a way to train them on at least the specific things about minimum uses and disclosures and having access controls and why they exist and all of those kind of things. So I don't know. I there's so many questions. That's what this whole, we should call this, there's so many questions. So,
yeah.
So it does give us, a bit of a point here, though. It was at the physician's practice. And this is not the first case that a health system had to do a settlement about what somebody was doing who had worked at a physician's practice that was independent of the health system, although this isn't clear. It was independent of the health system, and the practice didn't notify the health system that the employee was no longer there.
Right.
Your favorite thing.
Yeah.
But it's another reason that you should have processes with checklists for onboarding or arrivals and departures. There was a company that called them arrivals and departures. I like that. So, but that's why we want those. That's why if you created it, then you got to do something about it when they should no longer have access.
Yeah.
So
and document that. If you're telling a hospital system that somebody's no longer there, then have some documentation around that.
Yeah. So is it that the former employee took pictures and the video themselves before they left the employment? So they didn't do it after. They took the pictures, took the video, then left employment, then contacted the person. Could be that, because they don't mention, prior access. Again, so many questions, settlement.
Yeah. And it does say that the person who contacted the patient was an unknown person. Because my initial thinking was like, Well, maybe they knew the patient and they were like, hey, just want to let you know, kind of a whistleblower thing. That was kind of but the more you read it, the more confusing it gets. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's
All
going
it does
on.
is leave us with, we don't know.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is somebody had access they shouldn't have and abused their privileges.
But does the physician's practice not get caught up in this from a HIPAA standpoint? I know from a civil liability standpoint and all that, they get caught up in, they can get caught up in it. But what about from HIPAA and OCR? Do they not just go, hey, you're a business associate, you're caught up in this as well?
Well, again, it depends.
Yeah, because I can't imagine the physician practice does not bear a lot of the responsibility and probably has a lot of failures, as far as HIPAA goes as well.
Oh, again, we would have to do a lot of sleuthing that we don't have time for.
Yeah, I mean
that we may never find out.
Probably won't, because it could be that it's something they took care of in a different case. Maybe they opened up a different file. Maybe it would never hit anything that we would see it. They handled it beforehand. Who knows? Because we know there's a lot of stuff that gets handled that never sees the light of day.
Well, and it could be a physician's practice that is owned by the health system. Who knows?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we digress.
All right.
And before we move on to the edge thing, which will tie back into this, another point to make about having the access to things that you shouldn't have access to is we still don't like recall, Microsoft recall. No. And we mentioned it when we first saw it. There's so many problems we had with it. They've revamped it. We still don't like it. And Signal, the messaging app, came out and said Microsoft has simply given us no other option than that they have to limit the ability for people using their Windows app to access Signal messaging if they have that turned on. They're like, you can't use our app if you have recall turned on.
Yeah. In no universe do I think having Windows recall is a good idea. And I still can't, for the life of me, figure out why they're still pushing this thing. Why not kill it off? And just so, you know what, it was a bad idea. We're good. See you later. Sorry for the interruption. Back to your regularly scheduled program. But no, they don't want to do that. They're holding on to this thing, which makes me even more nervous. Like, you're willing to take a black eye, time and time again for this thing, and yet you won't let go of it. It's like, okay, why? There's something you're not telling me. That's my fear. My tinfoil hat is like, I don't like this at all.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's I'm sure there are positive things about it, but it's one of those things that the negative things far outweigh the positive to me. Oh,
absolutely. And again, why this type of software is existed for a long time. You could do this with other software. Why don't they just either leave it at that or spawn this off as their own version of a piece of software that people can buy if they want that? Don't bake it into every single operating system that hits the market that has Windows. That just makes no sense.
Yeah. So I don't know, but imagine you've got that functioning with somebody who has access, and now they have all of those copies and they can get them, because you're making what the problem was here is being automatically created.
Yeah. The only thing I can even come up with is that they're using this to feed data into AI tools. Yep. And they just see this as a way to do that. Let's take screenshots every so often and feed all that information in so that we can see what people are doing, what productivity things they're working on, and all this other stuff. But man, it's a terrible idea. Whoever had that idea, I don't even understand how they're still,
it's tied to something. Because
it is.
I mean, it's been a PR disaster. And
how an idea like that ever even got to the light of day? It boggles me.
Well, it's because they're like, well, we don't have to care about what you're doing on your computer.
But here's the other thing, and I talked to you about this before we started recording. You've got Microsoft, who obviously creates the operating system of Windows. They also create Windows Defender and other cybersecurity type tools in the Windows as well as in their 365 environment. They got security tools. On the other side of the hand, they've got this gaping privacy issue with Windows recall. And it's like, how can the company be both giving you one side where they're saying security and privacy matter, and the other side is like, no, not really. I cannot in good faith put my eggs in the Microsoft security basket. I know there are MSPs out there that do good for you. I'm not one of them. Just not going to do it.
No, Anyway, so we can get off that soapbox.
And the soapbox it is.
We don't like it. We don't think anyone should be using it. Definitely not using it in a healthcare environment.
No. So, I mean, supposedly it's going to come defaulted as off, but like I know, all it takes is running a script in the background. It'll turn that thing on, and I can turn it on enterprise-wide in a matter of seconds.
Yeah. Not only that, I can then also automatically have it exporting it every night, all the screenshots it took all day.
Yeah. It's gonna be a nightmare. I don't see how we can get around it unless they just pull it or they do something else to it, but it's going to be exploited and it's going to be bad.
Yeah. I mean, we've now encrypted the folder where there's, okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate that.
I don't know, man.
I know.
So we'll keep following that, just like we follow other things into dark alleys and see what happens.
Yeah, we keep looking and going, that's getting further and further down that dark alley. We ain't following it. All right, let's talk about the edge has become the battleground, which is an article. Well, we picked it up from Secure World, which we are both followers of Secure World. It's pretty awesome. If you don't, you should check it out.
Yeah.
The article Pardon?
I still hope they at some point come out with a theme park called Secure World because I want to go.
Ooh. Oh, we should design one. Of course, it would have to be online.
It's a virtual theme park.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. But anyway, in this article, they were discussing how, and I think we mentioned it before, CISA is cutting massive amounts of their workforce and the services and the work that they've been doing. They're no longer threat hunting at the level that they were. They're no longer proactively attacking adversaries. And it's basically, that work was helping. And now all of us are responsible. And this article was talking about, okay, first you're being told that. And if you're in the critical infrastructure, that means you already were getting pounded, even with them helping. Well, now they're going to stop helping. So the pounding is not going to stop, right?
No. Mm-hmm.
And we believe at one point we had mentioned that there are all these end-of-life routers out there that 2010 and older that are sitting connected to networks, and the hackers are grabbing these things. And they're Linksys routers. If you have a Linksys router that's like blue and like dark gray with two antennas, it's like you should be.
But I still see those things. Now I haven't seen one in a network, but I have like gone into my local Goodwill store and like they'll be on the shelf, and I'm and then come back. The next time it's gone, so it's gone somewhere.
Yeah.
Somebody decided it was a good idea to buy this thing.
Yeah, and they're able to take them and then turn them into devices for attacks.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, well, I don't have anything they want. Yeah, you do, Blanche. You do.
Everybody has something that somebody wants. If nothing else, you have processing power that can be used.
Yeah. But even those little bitty old routers are being used for, control mechanisms for cyber criminals to be used as a proxy. So it looks like they're coming from you. The attacks are coming from you. How do you feel about that now? But we've got that going on. We did cover the CrowdStrike, talking about the year-over-year adversarial activity against the U.S. infrastructure. 150% year-over-year activity.
Increase, yeah.
Yeah. 71% could be traced to abandoned edge hardware.
That's crazy.
So, first of all, let's define the edge. We keep saying the edge. Let's define the edge for those who, we always try to include stuff like that. So what's the edge, David?
Well, think of your network. You got the internet that comes into your office, and everything that initially connects to that point is basically the edge of your network. So it comes into the office, it's hitting a modem and or router. Sometimes they're the same piece of equipment. And then you've got, switches and all this kind of stuff, but all the things that are kind of between you as the PC user and the internet, those other things that are there are usually, the edge stuff. And it's also the things that people have locked away in a closet somewhere. They don't see it. Sometimes it's not even managed. There are things that don't show up on normal dashboards for the IT departments and MSPs.
Yeah, and I love to go into a small entity, and you see like 3 or 4 different old routers sitting there, but they're all lit up and plugged in.
Oh yeah, and this happens a lot. Go into a smaller entity, and there is that Linksys type of device. They just went to a big box store and picked it up off the shelf, and they connected it, and it's for. Unfortunately they say, home office. Sometimes they'll say small office, home office. And I'm like, no, don't say that. It's a it's a home router.
Yeah.
Like it is a consumer grade router. Don't say small office, home office, but they do it. So I get it. It's a marketing thing, but I see these all the time.
10, 15 years ago, it wasn't that bad to do that.
You're right.
It wasn't that bad, but again, you can't be doing today what you were doing 10 or 15 years ago. You can't be doing today.
You're right. And the bad thing about it is from a standpoint of, does it function? Yes. There's no way for you to know if you're not, up with what you're supposed to be doing properly. You don't know that you're not supposed to use this. You put it in place, you go through the setup, and it works. And you're like, yay, I did it. But it's not secure.
No. That's why we say IT and security aren't the same.
No. One of the things that I do and a lot of MSPs do is we don't even have the discussion about the edge devices anymore. It's part of the monthly fee. We're going to come in, we're going to bring the entire network in, we're going to put it in place. When it needs to be replaced, we're going to come in and we're going to replace it. We're not having these discussions about, well, why do we need to replace the router? Did we just buy this thing like 3, 4, 5 years ago? It's like, I don't want to talk about it.
I mean, if I have something that's 5 years old, it has to be replaced, Yeah. Or I have to have a plan to replace it soon. Yep. Only if I am maintaining it and making sure that it is secured and that I'm monitoring it, can I leave it sitting there? But no. So that's our edge. And so that's what they're attacking now. And they're using them to attack others. Plus, once they're using them and they have control of these things, then they're able to infiltrate that network anyway, if there's anything in there. So if it's in a small business, they can do that. If it's a home office, they're using it to attack the businesses that are in we already know we're under attack. We've covered that. So we've got this scenario. We're getting less help in counter offensive kind of stuff. So if you're not fighting back at all, you're just waiting on them to come hit you. So nobody's fighting for you up front like they were, and now you're more responsible than you were before, and the attacks are worse than they were before. And the article points out, and we haven't seen it, but we know that we've talked about it repeatedly. There's different versions that have come up about a cyber hygiene safe harbor kind of act, a law that says if you can demonstrate that you're doing secure practices, then it'll give you some liability shields if it was a nation state incident or other things like that. So it's becoming more prevalent, not just in healthcare, but across the board, the need for having the ability to demonstrate you are doing what's reasonable and appropriate, which means doing what we do more for more businesses. But you can't see these things, and that's the point it's making. Is the companies, they're tracking patches on laptops and servers, and when we say, well, do you manage the firmware? Do you do screenshots periodically of your firewall? Do you have end-of-life plans? Do you monitor the age of your devices? Or all of them? All of these things are part of a security risk analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a complete inventory of all of your equipment, then you can't know that. And
Right.
that's basically what people are doing is, well, I know we got a question recently because we revamped all of our way we do our inventory on our SRAs, and all the clients that are having to do it the first time, they're like, oh my God. Even the ones who have been clients forever, they're like, boy, you've added a lot that we have. No, these are all the things you're already doing. But when we would ask these questions, they weren't being documented thoroughly. And so that's why we've revamped it all. Plus, everybody's doing more cloud work, so we revamped everything to deal with that. And a question came up of why do you have a separate inventory for infrastructure than you do for our devices? Why are they not all together? And I'm like, well, before they were all together and we would say include them, and they wouldn't include them because it's not a device. Right. So now we make it clear you have got to track your inventory. And it's because of these problems. Mm-hmm. So, but it's exactly, it's always like, well, why aren't you doing that? Well, why aren't you doing it that way? Then you do it that way. Why aren't you doing it the other way? It's, it is.
Yep.
Anyway, the article goes on to point out, and not something we haven't pointed out repeatedly, that this is a leadership issue. Mm-hmm. And for those leaders, company leaders, business owners who continue to ignore this, it will bite you in the double dollar sign.
It'll bite you in the asset.
It'll bite you in the asset.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to go back and scream this one more time. Are you saying Donna Grindle of Cardin, are you saying this is not a cybersecurity issue for the IT people to figure out?
No, it is a risk issue for the leadership to figure out how to allocate resources, and across the board, not just money, but also, energy and monitoring and documentation and all those things are required. And it is not a technology problem. And if we don't get more, and it doesn't matter the size of your business or the type of your business, that is long gone. If you are going to have a business and you're going to operate it and be connected to anything, and have any data anywhere unless you're doing pen and paper. Well, actually, you would need to do pencil so you could erase. But but unless you're doing that for everything, your bills, everything, then, and an analog phone, because you got to have an analog phone.
A number 2 pencil, which, by the way, I've never seen a number 1 pencil. I'm just saying.
I want to know about that. Anyway, unless you're doing that, you need to have these things in mind at some level. And I love this. There were some really good quotes in this article, and of course we'll have a link to it because we always do. And I don't remember. We need to point out who wrote that. We'll look. I'll have to go to the link in just a second. But if your board minutes and risk register, which is like your risk analysis, don't show active oversight of edge resilience, meaning we are paying attention to those edge devices. We are paying attention to our infrastructure equipment and making sure it is being maintained properly. It says plaintiff's counsel will frame it as negligence, especially once a safe harbor standard exists for those who did act. So, we know. So you've got to have your, how was it? The article included 9 things. They're all things that we talked about before that you should do. And it was looking at, I think, more at like a manufacturing type infrastructure issue. But it was start with the unsexy asset census.
Right.
But, that's exactly what we say. You've got to have an inventory.
What you got? What you got? That's what you said. What you got?
And
on top of that, what is what you got?
Yeah.
Because, okay, here's my inventory of my systems. Great. What is the inventory of the stuff on your systems?
Yeah. And how are they connected? Are they right there on the edge going straight to the internet, or is there something in front of it?
Right.
So, but I do, it's the points that we already say over and over and over. If you don't know what you have, then you don't know how to protect it.
No.
It's making sure you know what's old and at end of life. And the quote was, erase end of life blind spots. And it was really cool. Build a kill list.
Yeah, I like that. They're not gonna, bring it in and decommission it. They're gonna kill it.
Yeah, I know. Anything with past vendor support or running default credentials, which absolutely default credentials, huge problem, needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And it's like, here it is. This is critical technical debt.
Mm-hmm.
It's debt. I love that phrase. Audit committees shouldn't flinch at spending to avoid becoming the next Colonial Pipeline headline. Boom.
Yep. Well, I had an interesting conversation the other day, although short. I said something to somebody about brand damage, and they were like, but really, is that a concern at all anymore? Like, are people really concerned about damaging their brand at all? And I was like, it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think it's not a universal yes. I think some people are like, no, I'm not worried about it at all, because I know that most people have, long-term memory loss. They'll remember it today, but there'll be something else that'll take their mind off of it in a few months, and they won't remember it.
But on the flip side, reputation in healthcare, very different than reputation in other sectors, number one.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, from a small business perspective, being a small business owner, I believe that, it depends on what you're doing. So for you and I, a severe cyber attack would be a major problem for what we do. but a candy store, not so much.
That's my next business.
I know, right? I would be in so much trouble, sugar high constantly.
Yeah,
But
I'm just gonna sell suckers just so I can say it all day long. Sucker.
okay, we got to bring this around to done soon. But there are a lot of things that you can ignore, and it could be a reputation thing, which is true, but the expense. It is the expense of dealing with the problem. Even if I'm not dealing with a brand issue, it is expensive to deal with these problems, and they don't go away quickly.
Nope.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, so the other points in the list, it was like, make people work together. It's all stated in more of a nerd language.
Fusion team.
Yeah. But, it's like pay attention to what's going on and make sure people look and get people to work together. And then the last one was a tabletop your first 72 hours without the net.
Yeah.
And it is, can we operate manually? Who owns customer communication? Repeat all these exercises until the answers feel boring because they won't be in real life.
Yeah, that's true.
And during the next board session, you should pose these 3 questions. So the next time you sit down, if you're a single business owner like me and you're thinking, you should answer these questions to yourself. But I actually would discuss them with my team. But you should discuss them with your management team, your board, whatever. Do we have a living inventory of every edge device that could impact revenue or safety?
Yeah, I like the term living inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah. So living inventory would mean that it's something that changes and morphs, and you are keeping up with that.
Exactly. So every time something changes, you're updating the inventory, not once a year. Then, can management show evidence that those devices are patched, segmented, and monitored? And number 3, if an adversary triggered localized outages tomorrow, what is our plan for business continuity and regulatory disclosure before federal help arrives? Because it's not going to be quick.
Nope, if at all.
Yeah. And if the answers are shallow, what if they're bone dry? But if the answers are shallow, then you should redirect capital.
Yeah. Well, I want to bring this back around again to the second question. It doesn't say, can IT show evidence that those devices are patched, segmented, or monitored? It says, can management show evidence?
Exactly.
So your answer shouldn't be, yeah, IT's got that handled, or my MSP's doing that. Can you, as the business owner, as management, as the board, can you show evidence? Do you have it? Don't assume it. It doesn't say, can you assume that you have evidence?
Yeah, that's not helpful.
No.
And to show it over a period of time, because we've seen it's not like, I can show that last week I had the evidence right before the damage was done, right before the cyber attack. It's, can I show I've been doing this over a period of a year?
Right.
2 years, 3 years. But it is, it's kind of like we say at our house, when you a homeowner, you can have things where you have to spend money on the house and you have to have something done, and it's not something that anyone else notices except the fact that you notice that you can flush the toilet because you've had all the plumbing issues that were preventing you from doing that taken care of, but no one else will notice. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't make your house look any different, but it certainly keeps the value up instead of building an outhouse out back.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
that could be a stinky problem.
Stinky problem, but So, no, it's not pretty and flashy and exciting, but it is absolutely essential to your ability to operate.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a whole section on closing thoughts, and it's the where is the I got to go back and make sure we give credit to the guy that wrote this article, so that because it was really an excellent article. It's Todd Inskeeper. Inskeep. I think Inskeeper because I'm at an N. By Todd Inskeep, who published it, I think, first on LinkedIn. But he is executive advisor, inventor, and CISO. Anyway, really excellent article. Go check it out. But in his closing thoughts, he added this statement: the adversary has already demonstrated the edge is the fastest path to strategic leverage. The only question is whether your leadership understands it too and acts before gravity does its work.
That is the only question.
Yes. To be or not to be secure.
Yep. And there will be some leadership that do what they need to do, and there will be a lot who will not. And they will be made examples of. And we might talk about some here on the podcast.
I know. These days.
Unfortunately. I'd love for us to be able to just shut the podcast down because we have nothing to talk about. Mm-hmm. But I have a feeling that day will never come.
No.
So anyway, we have to figure out a way to do this posthumously. Okay. All right. That is our show for today, folks. Thanks for listening. Be sure to join us again next week when we talk more about why HIPAA's not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.